Flash Season 3 finale finish line. Definitely not the finale that I was expecting, but it was certainly a really good finale. Of course, we start off the episode where the last episode ended, which is seemingly Savitar killing Iris. And they do a really great opening where it's super sad and depressing, and it's like, oh man, Iris died. HR shows up at the last minute, and it's too late. And then it of course turns out that Iris is not Iris, but in fact HR, because his speech with Cisco from the last episode did lead him to switching places with Iris, which I thought was really well done. Some people figured that from the last episode that it was actually going to end up being HR and not actually Iris, and I thought that would be interesting. And I wasn't looking at it in terms of television because it's television. They can skip any amount of time and it makes sense. I was just like, I wonder what it would be. And personally speaking, and I don't think this is too crazy, but as much as Barry changes time, I'm like, somehow somebody's going to run back in time. I legitimately had that idea, after the finale. I was like, okay, well, if she died, something's going to happen. I knew things would be fine, but I personally thought that they would reverse Iris's death, and then, in the same vein, stop Savitar, and then everyone would live, and then poof, we go on to season 4. But instead, it just ends up being a switcheroo. So it's like, sweet, Iris isn't dead, and then it's like, crap, that still means someone else died. And HR was pretty awesome. I liked HR. So it sucks to see him go. It does seem that they're going to have Wells coming back in season 4, or 2 Wells, of course. So I'm excited for him coming back. I thought it was pretty cool. He is the one that hasn't died yet. So I was like, considering they introduced him, or kind of reintroduced him in the last episode, I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And I thought, what if he died? I think I talked about that before, but it was sad, but it was also kind of cool. They changed it, but it was, still sad because we still have a character that's lost. But it was definitely a well done opening. And then it's like, all right, well, what the heck do we do from here? Like, where in the world does this end up going? So I really enjoyed the way it played out. Of course, they have the new memories are affecting Savitar, where he's like, it wasn't actually Iris, it actually ended up being HR. So that's how Cisco finds out, which I thought was an interesting way to do it, just because it's like, for the villains, it's just like, oh man, I screwed up, I didn't kill the right person. And then for Cisco, it's like, dang, that sucks, a different person died. Like, I was somewhat prepared for one person to die, and then someone else ends up dying. So it was just an interesting way to do that. But, they go through, of course, Cisco working throughout the episode to change the abilities of the Speed Force bazooka. I think he is like, I don't know, one of very few people that actually doesn't do what the villain says. Like, we get to the end of the episode and he ends up screwing over Savitar. Like, even if everybody else died, it was like, well, I didn't allow him to have all the abilities that he ever wanted, and I actually allowed Jay Garrick to escape, which was a really cool thing to do. But going through the episode, of course, it's Cisco and Caitlin, and Cisco's trying to help Caitlin. He finds out that Julian, who makes his return from missing in the last episode, we find out that he was actually with Caitlin's mother, and he makes a cure for her. So, of course, Savitar gets those new memories, and he tries to use that against Cisco, like, oh, I'm not going to kill you, I'm going to kill her. And that was before he even got the memory. So then it's like, oh, you know what, I'm just now remembering? Julian just got back and he has a cure, so you can save her, and you're so close, but you have to do the bazooka. So I like the way that he was, of course, trying to manipulate him as the villain. And then, I don't know why, but Barry has this insane idea to be like the hero of all heroes, and it's like, hey, evil version of me that's hell-bent on ruining my life so that you can have a crappy life. Why don't we just be friends? We make it work. Do the hero thing. And it was crazy. And I was like, how is this playing out? Because he seemed to go along with it, especially when Barry was like, you know all of my thoughts. You remember having this conversation. So, what am I thinking then? So he knew exactly what was happening. I'm like, all right, well, maybe not Barry, but maybe someone else. And then even if that were the case, Barry couldn't say a single thing because Savitar would have even the smallest bit of memory. And it's just like, what in the world? How is this going to play out? So he goes through. Everyone's, of course, pissed at him. That makes a ton of sense. And it's like, all right, well, we have to find some way to help him live in our world. We can save him from the paradox, allow him to basically tell us where Cisco and Caitlin are. We get to Caitlin, give her the cure. She's officially Caitlin. And, all is right, sort of, with the world. HR is still gone. But we, solve the problem without losing anybody else. And I was like, all right, well, it seems to be playing out this way. This is really weird. And it gets to the point where they're talking with Iris, or Savitar is talking with Iris, and it gets down to it, and he seems super happy and stuff, or well, not happy, but he seems sad, but somewhat better about seeing Iris and everything. So he decides, or at least he says, I'm gonna go bring them home, and he takes off. And then it's like, okay, here's the villain mode. He was doing that whole ploy because he knew that Barry actually was trying to do like the superhero thing. It's like, sweet, I could just act like I'm sad and this and that, drop a little, drop the Philosopher's Stone, let that go off and kill all of them inside the Star Lab. So I was like, okay, now it makes a lot of sense. We're going back to the villain thing, because in the middle, there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, man, they almost pulled an arrow where I was super confused. They actually did the exact same thing, now that I think about it, where I won't spoil it, but there's a moment where there's some talky stuff, and I was like, that worked, and I was very surprised. And then it's like, oh, that was actually all a part of the villain's plan. So it's almost like the exact same thing, except with superpowers. So, and that's not exactly a bad thing, but still pretty cool because it did surprise me. But he takes off, he thinks he killed everybody, so he gives that info to Cisco. Cisco ends up being saved by Gypsy, which was like our first, reappearance of a character. So she comes in, saves him. They actually have a little bit of an argument, which I actually love that scene, where he was super upset, and she's like, this is the thanks I get for saving you and stuff. So I thought that was a funny moment. Then of course, he realizes that everyone's actually alive. They come up with the plan. That's when, Savitar uses the gun. He thinks everything's good. It doesn't matter that anyone escaped. I'll be in every second of every minute of every hour, and that's a really cool villain plan. I thought that was actually really awesome. And so of course it starts up, and I'm like, they're screwed. And then of course it's revealed that Cisco actually did something totally different, and he was actually smart, because he's a smart freaking character. Because I hate when that happens in TV shows where the characters are heroes, and it's like, to save this person, I'm totally gonna do this. Especially, it's different for other shows where it's just like a villain as a normal human, but this is like a super villain would literally be in every moment of all eternity. You gotta sacrifice some people for that. I'm sorry, that sucks to say, but that's like the ultimate evil plan, to literally be in every moment of existence for all eternity from beginning to end. And he made the smart play where it's like, as much as it would suck to lose Caitlyn, we would lose everything if he did that. So we get this super awesome sequence where everybody teams up. Jay Garrick runs out. Cisco tosses his hat to him, so he's got his hat, and so we have Cisco, Gypsy, Wally, Barry, and Jay, and they're all going against Savitar and Caitlyn. So of course we have our Vibers, they're going up against Killer Frost, and we have our Speedsters, which was a really cool sequence. Normally it's like, okay, we get like our little close-up of them, and it's them kind of running fast, but the green screen is moving super fast behind them. The whole shot was so fast that even they were moving fast, and it was like flying through the forest and stuff, and it looked really cool. The part where Savitar jumps and he blows up the trees to make them fall on each other. Wally goes under, Barry goes over, Jay goes around the side because he's older, I guess. But it was really cool. And then the part where Savitar, he jumps because he's running so freaking fast. He jumps and uses the trail of lightning as a lightning bolt and tries to strike them, which basically takes out both Wally and Jay for the rest of the fight, which really sucked because I was like, man, I would love to see them extend this fight, because it was really just a quick chase, and then it was, of course, our main hero versus our main villain, which was still cool. But I was like, man, that chase was super sweet, and I would have loved to have seen it, especially with Savitar being as fast as he is. He could have taken all three of them down anyway, and I think it would have made logical sense, because that's just how fast he is. We've seen him do it against both Wally and Barry, so it's it's not that crazy if he could take all three of them on, within the suit. So it was still awesome. Even though they got knocked out, we still have a great moment where they're going back and forth, and Barry seemingly gets knocked out. We have Savitar that's saying I'm about to disappear because my mission failed, but I'm gonna kill everyone so that you're super freaking depressed. And Barry jumps into the suit, and it was just a super cool moment where he phases through the suit, pushes Savitar out, and then he takes over the suit, and it turns red, which I thought was very interesting, because I'm like, that looks way more evil than the whole season with Savitar, where it's blue and silver, and when Barry took it over, it almost went red and black, which is very interesting, because a couple of scenes before that, I know I'm jumping all over the place with this fight, but a little bit before that, we actually had Black Flash come in, and that was a pretty awesome moment where, of course, because I was wondering, I was like, okay, so we have our villains doing this thing, And I'm thinking, why do they need to go to this random open field for Savitar to run in a circle and make a portal? That made no sense to me. I was super confused. And I was like, okay, now it makes sense. Because they have to get to an open area because they need a way to have some sort of targeting where Black Flash comes out of, the Speed Force and he can't really hide. He has to just run back and forth until he gets close. So they do that. He has Caitlin actually freeze Black Flash. He shatters into a bunch of pieces. I still don't think that's the end of him because I thought we saw the end of him before. Because if you watch Legends of Tomorrow, they kind of did something similar. And I was like, oh, he's dead. And then poof, here he is again. So I'm like, it's just the way it plays for people who are within the Speed Force. They will always find a way to show up again. That's just how it works. But that was a really cool moment. They even have Caitlin say like, see you, Zoom, or something like that, which I thought was pretty awesome. But the fight was really cool. Barry knocking Savitar through the suit. Then, of course, he shatters the suit after Savitar's like, if you kill me, you'll become me, and either way I live. Which I don't think would have been the case even if Barry killed him. They're like, yeah, he had a dark moment, but that's not like depressed, make, time remnants dark. So he shatters the suit and then, once again, a cool hero moment, punches him, and then he does kind of the stupid hero thing that a lot of people do in TV shows where it's like, I did that punch, knocked him out, or, I assume I knocked him out, and then I'm just strolling away, and Savitar gets up to run behind him, and I thought Barry would probably have to kill him, because I figured, of course, Barry's not going to die. So I was like, maybe Barry will actually turn around and he'll just have to do it. Like, it'll be in like that last minute and he makes that final blow just as he's about to disappear anyway. And technically Barry still had to kill someone. So I was like, oh, maybe that's what's about to happen. But it actually ends up being Iris. She comes in, shoots him in the back and kills him, and then he fades away. And I was like, well, that's an interesting way to do it for sure. So very surprised by how that ended up playing out, but it was super awesome. After that, of course, they have the memorial service for HR, which was a pretty decent scene, and we get to have kind of like a small reveal, I guess, of what HR said to Barry when he wanted to, kind of the message he wanted for Cisco. So that was definitely a good moment, and they kind of referenced the fact that Cisco is always close to every version of Wells that they end up meeting, but there was something a little different with them because, and this is something where they had like a whole episode about it, this version of Wells was kind of the student to Cisco compared to, the other way around. So that was definitely a nice moment. Caitlin, of course, ends up kind of officially coming back. I was going to Caitlin the whole review, but she officially comes back by the end of this episode. She deems herself no longer Killer Frost, but she's also not Caitlin. She's kind of just somewhere in between, so she needs to figure that out. And I'm curious where that's going to lead her character. Does that mean we won't see her in the next season? I don't believe that'll be the case. I haven't really looked up any news as far as what we are going to get for season 4, but she's a big part of it, especially now that she officially has the metahuman powers, and she's no longer just, it's Caitlin who's Killer Frost. Like, we knew how that was going to play out. So it'll be nice to see her in this mode where she has the abilities, but she's not that evil villain. And I assume we'll see her, maybe not from the very beginning, maybe, who knows what they're going to do as far as like time skips or whatever. But I'm sure she'll still be there for season 4. But I'm looking forward to that. We have, once again, our newly altered version of Team Flash. So I'm excited to see how that plays out, where we have, Julian, Wells has decided to come back. I would assume we'll see Jessie a lot more because the whole reason she was gone was because she went to Earth 3 to help replace Jay Garrick since he saved Wally. So I would assume he's going to go back to his Earth, and then Jessie will come to, I guess, Earth 1. So I'm sure we'll see her some more. She might actually stay in Earth 2 just for the whole speedster thing where it's like we can't have too many speedsters, but who knows? Considering the way they decided to end this episode, their maximum seems to be 2, unless it's like, a finale moment where it's like we can just throw a bunch of speedsters in to fight the main bad guy. But Barry is gone for a time being. I mean, of course, the newspaper from the future is still there. It's still Iris West Allen. What was really sad was they have that moment after HR's funeral where it's like, I didn't want to send out these wedding invitations because I didn't know if I would live or die. And so Barry runs and he gives out all those wedding invitations, like, boom, deliver. And it was a cool moment where it's like they have their happy ending. And then as soon as the end of the episode came where it was like, I have to go back into the Speed Force, the first thing I thought of was like, he delivered those things. And now it's going to be like Iris telling everyone, like, it's not going to happen because he, like, disappeared or something crazy. And I was like, wow, that's a random thing to pop into my head. But it was, like, super sad for some reason. And, of course, everyone has to say their, like, super dramatic goodbyes. there's an amazing effect, but like all the different color lightning striking the ground, that was actually very freaking awesome. As it's striking the ground, killing who knows how many people, everyone gets a little emotional speech as just people die all over the place. But they all get their little speeches, and then Barry goes into the Speed Force, and that is the end of season 3. And they love to freaking do this with their finales, where they just end stuff and it's just like done. Like, it's just done. I mean, last season we got a cliffhanger, but like when season 1 ended and they had the portal in the sky and stuff, and then this season it's just like it's cut off, Barry vanishes. Like, that's literally how the first season is. It's just like gone, you guys figure it out. So there's like no true cliffhanger. It's just like he's gone, and you have to make up a million theories for how they're gonna get him out, and you know what's gonna allow him to escape and keep the Speed Force satiated. Because honestly, I thought he was gonna make a time remnant. I was like, that would be interesting if after all this he makes one single time remnant, and the time remnant goes into the Speed Force. It would just be very interesting if that's how it played out, where it was like, do I make a time remnant after all the stuff we did? And he doesn't end up doing that. But it would have been awesome if that even came up, I think, as far as dialogue. If he was like, could I make a time remnant? And, you know, how would that play out? So I just, it was cool. It was just in my head. Like, it would be interesting if that even, you know, came up as far as, like, ending dialogue. Like, if he made another time remnant, kind of like he did before to defeat Zoom, and just a sacrificial time remnant. That's kind of what they're for, admittedly. At least for Barry's side. As far as the villains, they use time remnants like actual, like their time remnants always seem to live, but Barry's is just like, make a time remnant to do this, and they always die. Even when we don't see them, all his time remnants die or become the ultimate villain of this season. So it's very interesting with him going into the Speed Force to stay within the prison. As he mentioned, it was his fault that there's even a prison there that needs to be satiated. So it was just very interesting. You know, it's just a crazy way to end off the season. I would imagine a really simple way to do it for season 4 would just be, you know, this woman made a prison. She can find some way to destroy it without it, you know, disrupting everything and destroying the planet. I would assume that's an easy way to do it, but I imagine it'll be a bit more complicated than that. But I'm definitely looking forward to season 4. One of the things that's going to be happening is the character DeVoe. I didn't look up the character before this review, but I do remember hearing that name, and I believe it was in reference to the series. It could have just been anything that I've seen ever for Flash, so I will admit that. But I feel like that's who the main villain is actually supposed to be for season 4, and it's not a speedster. They're done doing that, so that's done with we have our speedster heroes. Maybe they'll reference, you know, like Black Flash as far as death, and Marathon is always in existence. Like, he's just always somewhere, sometime. So I'm sure we'll see him again. But we are not going to have a speedster villain as the main villain next season. I'm excited for that. Honestly, I just want a really cool villain that lasts the whole season, that doesn't just run or isn't siphoning powers. Or in this version, I think it was a bit cooler. I think maybe Zoom's storyline was still a bit sweeter, even though I still remember that part where it was like, this dude shaved his hair and no one on that earth remembered who the F he was. The only serial killer ever. But I digress from that. I still think his story may have been a little bit cooler, especially with all the reveals and stuff like that. But I'm excited for us to not have a speedster villain. They kind of got rid of some of my favorite characters as far as, like, you know, the rogues, because all of them were like went to Legends of Tomorrow. So it's like, well, can't really see Snart come back. They even reference the fact that he's dead. I doubt we'll get Rory. He's basically a hero at this point anyway, because he's in Legends of Tomorrow. So we won't get them. Golden Glider, I don't think she'll be a villain, really, especially without her brother being around. Also, that actress is in another show on the CW, so she wouldn't show up too much anyway. But I'm excited to see what we get for this next season, of course. Would love to know what you guys thought about this finale, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And of course, I just want to know, what were your favorite moments from this season, favorite episodes? What are your theories for season 4? What do you guys just want to see in general? There are a million things that we still have not seen as far as the Flash goes. Like, there's so much more that they can show us. We've basically seen, like, his greatest hits as far as speedsters. We got Reverse Flash, of course. We got Zoom. We got, you know, Jay Garrick. They've done that. Savitar. So it's like, all right. They've pretty much done, there's still so many, there are a lot of versions of Flashes out there. Like, even just as, like, main Flash, it's crazy. But they're done with that for now. We got a million other characters that they could show off. We've got references to Grodd. He could easily be a villain for the main, like, a whole season. But considering the story that they've already given him, I don't think that that's really possible anymore. But he had some good episodes already anyway. But would love to know what villains you guys want to see from season 4, what you guys want to see in general from season 4. And like I said, I want to know what you guys thought about this finale, so please comment below, let me know, and I'll see you guys next season.